Hello, welcome to Walk in the Word podcast. I'm your host, Al McMahon. This is episode 13 of my podcast, and I'm excited to announce that in this episode, we're beginning a series of studies from the book of Job titled, Job, a Man Who Fears God and Turns from Evil. This is the introduction to this study. The book of Job is a very interesting book in the Bible that has a lot of theology in it, but it also has a lot of applications that we can apply in our relationship to God. I hope you've read the book of Job, but if you haven't, here's a brief summary of what happened to him. Job was a very successful man and prospered mainly because of his close relationship with God. The first 3 verses in the book describes Job's character and his possessions. Job 1:1-3 says, "There was a man in the country of Uz named Job. He was a man of complete integrity, who feared God and turned away from evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. His estate included 7,000 sheep and goats, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 female donkeys, and a very large number of servants. Job was the greatest man among all the people of the East." Wow. This is an amazing statement that really explains just how wealthy he was in his time. God had blessed him with 7 sons and 3 daughters, 7,000 sheep and goats, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 female donkeys, and he had a very large number of servants to take care of his flocks. Now, I believe the reason that God blessed Job so much is stated in verse 1, where we read that he was a man of complete integrity who feared God and turned away from evil. In the last part of verse 3, we read that Job was the greatest man among all the people of the East. So we learn from these verses that Job was very wealthy and a man who was truly admired in his community. I'm sure that he was looked up to and admired in his community because of his integrity and the fact that he feared God and turned away from evil. One day, Satan came before God asking permission from him to test Job. God told Satan, "No one else on earth is like him, a man of perfect integrity who fears God and turns away from evil." Satan said to God, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Haven't you placed a hedge around him and his household and everything he owns? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But stretch out your hand and strike everything he owns, and he will surely curse you to your face." So basically here, Satan was saying that if God would allow him to test Job by taking away everything he owned, that Job would turn away from God and curse God to his face. With that, God gave Satan permission to test Job, telling him that he could do whatever he wanted to Job except take his life. Satan didn't waste any time. He went right to work, and in the course of one day, Job lost everything he owned, including his children, as they were in their oldest brother's house. A powerful wind swept in, and the house collapsed on them, killing all of them. Think about this for a moment. If you were a man with complete integrity who feared God and turned away from evil, how would you react if this happened to you? Would you become angry at God? Would you turn away from God and curse God? Well, this is exactly what Satan thought Job would do, but we see in the text that Job responded totally different than Satan thought he would. In Job 1:20-22, we read, "Then Job stood up, tore his robe, and shaved his head. He fell to the ground and worshipped, saying, Naked I came in my mother's womb, and naked I leave this life. The Lord gives, and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Throughout all this, Job did not sin or blame God for anything. I must admit that I might not respond as Job did. And I pray that if anything like this ever happened to me, that I would respond as Job did. But the one thing that we must consider is this life or this world isn't our home. We're just passing through. It's eternity that we need to be concerned with, and Job realized this by his response. Throughout all this trial, Job's wife even turned from God as we see in chapter 2, verse 9 and 10. His wife said to him, "Are you still holding on to your integrity? Curse God and die." Well, you would think that if anyone knew Job was a man of integrity, his wife should. But even she blamed God for what happened. Now notice Job's response to her in statement 10. He said, "You speak as a foolish woman speaks," he told her. "Should we accept only good from God and not adversity?" Throughout all this, Job did not sin in what he said. Job was right when he said, "Should we accept only good from God and not adversity?" If you look at our trials in this way, as Job did, we can understand that God is in control, and that when we experience trials in this life, God only wants us to grow closer to Him and depend on Him through those trials. Romans 8, to my mind, as I think about this, it says, "We know that all things work together for the good of those who love God, who are called according to His purpose." Now, not only did Job's wife respond negatively to Job's situation, so did three of his friends. They came to Job insisting what he was going through was punishment from God for some gross sin that Job had committed. Isn't that just like a lot of so-called friends? Rather than trying to comfort Job and encourage Job through this trial, they came trying to judge Job and accusing him that his situation was caused by sin in his life. Let me just say that we should never respond to anyone's trials in this way. We are not a judge of anyone, and if any of our friends are going through trials, as brothers and sisters in Christ, we should pray for them and encourage them, not judge them. Then after Job's friends' accusations, Job had his turn to respond to them. We see in chapter 31 that he never backed down from his position that he hadn't committed a sin that caused his trial. He maintained his integrity by giving them a list of his character traits that shows us why God said that there was no one on earth like him, one with integrity who feared God and turned away from evil. When I think about this, I want to pattern my life after Job. Wouldn't it be great if God would make that statement about any of us? This is what we're going to be looking at in this study. We're going to concentrate on chapter 31 and Job's response to the accusations of his friends made about him. In doing so, we're going to see Job's character traits that would please God to the point that God would make such a bold statement about him. So I want to encourage you to join me in this study so we can see what we need to be doing in our life so that we too can please God. And by doing so, we will be better able to endure our trials the same way that Job did. To follow along with this study, simply click the follow link on whatever platform you're listening on, and you will receive a notification whenever I post new content. I pray that you will come along with me as we study Job. I want to thank those who have supported my podcast. You have been a great source of encouragement to me. If you have any questions, comments, or just want to share something, remember, you can email me at walkinthewordpodcast@gmail.com. So stay tuned as we begin this study, and remember to walk in the Word every day. May God richly bless you.